What if the very thing we cling to most tightly, the endless pursuit of desire, is exactly what chains us to suffering? Arthur Schopenhauer believed that at the root of human unhappiness lies an insatiable hunger. This hunger, which he called the will, is never satisfied. We chase what we want, we grasp it, and almost immediately another desire arises to take its place. The cycle never ends, and with each turn of the wheel, our restlessness deepens. Desire feels natural, even necessary. From the moment we wake, our day is structured by it: the craving for food, the ambition for success, the longing for recognition, the search for love. Desire whispers that fulfillment is just around the corner, if only we achieve, if only we acquire, if only we arrive. But once we reach what we thought we wanted, the joy fades quickly, and we find ourselves reaching again. Schopenhauer saw in this cycle a kind of slavery. To live ruled by desire is to be bound to an endless treadmill, running toward a finish line that never comes. But what happens if we step off the treadmill? What if, instead of chasing desire, we let it go? For Schopenhauer, this was not just an abstract thought, it was the possibility of true peace. He argued that liberation from suffering begins when we stop feeding the will. By renouncing the endless chase, by loosening our grip on the things we believe will save us, we make space for a deeper calm, a quiet joy untouched by the rise and fall of fortune. At first, this may sound bleak. To give up desire, does that not mean giving up life itself? But Schopenhauer pointed to examples that prove otherwise. Think of the serenity of a monk sitting in silence, free from the need to prove himself to the world. Think of the artist absorbed in creation, forgetting ambition, losing herself entirely in the act. Think even of those rare moments in your own life when, instead of striving for something else, you felt at peace simply being. In those moments, the will is quiet. And in its absence, a new kind of freedom appears. This does not mean that one must abandon the world entirely. Schopenhauer did not demand that we all retreat into monasteries or live without possessions. What he suggested was subtler, a shift in orientation. Instead of being ruled by desire, we can learn to observe it, question it, and release it. We can recognize that no achievement will finally complete us, no possession will finally satisfy us. By loosening the grip of expectation, we allow ourselves to inhabit the present without constantly reaching beyond it. Consider how much of our anxiety comes not from what is happening, but from what we want to happen. We want more success than we have, and so we feel inadequate. We want others to admire us, and so we feel restless when they do not. We want the future to unfold according to our plans, and so we feel despair when it doesn't. Each of these pains is tied not to reality itself, but to desire's demand that reality be different. To release desire, then, is not to lose life, but to see it more clearly as it is. Schopenhauer admired traditions like Buddhism for recognizing this truth long before Western philosophy did. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering and that liberation comes from letting it go. Schopenhauer saw in this teaching a mirror of his own insight, that peace is not found by adding more to life, but by subtracting the restless striving that blinds us to the peace already available. Of course, letting go of desire is not easy. It requires practice, discipline, and courage. To renounce desire is to confront the emptiness it leaves behind, and at first, that emptiness can feel unbearable. But if one can endure it, Schopenhauer suggested that emptiness transforms into fullness, a fullness not of things possessed, but of a mind at rest. This, he argued, is the closest we come to freedom, not the freedom to chase every desire, but the freedom from being enslaved by them. Perhaps the greatest paradox of Schopenhauer's philosophy is this: we imagine that desire gives life meaning, but in truth, it is letting go of desire that reveals life's deepest meaning. In releasing the endless chase, we find what desire always promised but could never deliver: peace. If the first step toward peace is recognizing how desire enslaves us, the second is understanding how deeply this enslavement shapes every part of our lives. Schopenhauer believed that the will is not just one force among many, it is the very core of existence. It drives animals to hunt, plants to grow toward light, and humans to strive endlessly for what they believe will bring fulfillment. But in humans, this will manifest with a cruel twist. We are conscious of it. We know that we are always wanting, always reaching, always unsatisfied. And that knowledge is itself a source of pain. Think for a moment about your own life. How many times have you told yourself, if only I had this, I would finally be at peace? Maybe it was a promotion, a new home, a relationship, a possession. And yet, when you achieved it, how long did the satisfaction last? Days? Weeks? Perhaps even less. Very quickly, the mind shifts. Now you want something else, something more, something better. The horizon of desire moves as fast as you can walk toward it. And so you keep walking, but you never arrive. Schopenhauer described this as life's cruel irony, that desire promises peace but delivers only new forms of restlessness. This endless reaching explains why wealth, power, or fame rarely bring true happiness. The successful businessman feels empty even after building an empire. The celebrated actor, adored by millions, lies awake in despair. The artist who finally earns recognition is plagued by the fear of irrelevance. Desire never surrenders, it merely changes its shape. Even when we obtain what we once thought essential, desire whispers that something else is missing. And so, no matter how much we gain, we remain hungry. Schopenhauer saw in this cycle the root of much human suffering, but he also saw a possible path out. If the will is the problem, then the quieting of the will is the solution. This is why he admired those rare individuals who managed to loosen their grip on desire, whether through philosophy, spiritual practice, or deep engagement with art. In such moments, the will is suspended. We are no longer pulled by longing into the future or dragged by regret into the past. Instead, we inhabit the present with a stillness that feels almost miraculous. Art was especially important for Schopenhauer in this regard. When we lose ourselves in music, when we stand before a painting and forget ourselves, when a poem carries us beyond the confines of our own concerns, we experience a temporary release from the will. For those moments, desire is silent. We are no longer striving for what we lack, we are absorbed in what is. This is why Schopenhauer considered art a higher form of human experience, not because it entertains us, but because it liberates us, however briefly, from the prison of endless craving. But he did not stop there. Schopenhauer argued that compassion is also born from the quieting of desire. When our will is loud, we are consumed by our own needs. When it grows quiet, we see the suffering of others more clearly. In this way, renouncing desire does not isolate us from the world, it connects us to it more deeply. By stepping off the treadmill of our own wants, we make space to recognize the humanity in those around us. For Schopenhauer, compassion was the highest moral act, and it became possible only when the will loosened its grip. Of course, renunciation sounds severe. To many, it feels like deprivation, as though letting go of desire would strip life of color and meaning. But Schopenhauer flipped this view on its head. He believed that clinging to desire is what makes life colorless, because it blinds us to the beauty of what is already here. Letting go is not about losing, but about seeing. It is about recognizing that joy is not always in grasping something new, but in perceiving more deeply what is already present. Imagine, for a moment, walking through a forest. If you are consumed by desire, thinking of what you must achieve, what you must earn, what you must prove, you might not even notice the forest at all. The trees blur, the air feels heavy, your mind races elsewhere. But if you release those desires, if you allow them to drift away even for a moment, suddenly the forest reveals itself. The rustle of leaves becomes music, the sunlight through branches a tapestry, the simple act of walking a source of peace. Nothing changed in the forest, what changed was you. This is what Schopenhauer meant, that by letting go, we see more clearly, feel more deeply, live more fully. And yet, this freedom is fragile. It requires vigilance, because desire is cunning. Even in moments of peace, it slips back in, whispering that we should want something more. Schopenhauer did not deny this struggle. In fact, he thought it was the central battle of human life, the battle between the endless demands of the will and the quiet strength of renunciation. And in that battle, even small victories matter. Every time we release a desire rather than chase it, every time we accept what is rather than pine for what is not, we taste a little more of the freedom he believed was possible. The question, then, is not whether we can eliminate desire entirely, that may be beyond us, but whether we can loosen its grip enough to glimpse the peace that lies on the other side. For Schopenhauer, this glimpse is already a triumph. It is the reminder that life's deepest freedom is not found in gaining more, but in wanting less. If the second step of Schopenhauer's vision shows us how loosening desire brings glimpses of peace, the final step is learning how this renunciation can shape an entire way of life. For Schopenhauer, letting go was not a single act, but a practice, a daily orientation of the mind and heart toward freedom rather than compulsion. To renounce desire is not to withdraw from life, but to engage with it differently, to live as though peace is not something we must chase but something already within reach. At the center of this practice is acceptance. Desire thrives on resistance, the refusal to accept what is, the constant demand that reality be other than it is. We want life to match our expectations, and when it doesn't, we suffer. But acceptance dissolves this tension. It allows us to meet the present as it is, without the restless demand that it be more. Acceptance does not mean passivity, it means clarity. It means acting when action is needed, but without the desperation of craving. It means seeing life not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a flow to move with. Schopenhauer knew this was difficult, which is why he turned often to examples of those who embodied it. Saints who lived in simplicity, free from the chains of ambition. Philosophers who found joy not in wealth or praise but in contemplation. Artists who created not to impress or profit, but because creation itself was their peace. These figures, he suggested, revealed that freedom is possible, not by conquering desire, but by laying it down. This surrender has profound consequences for how we experience suffering itself. Normally, suffering feels unbearable because it frustrates our desires, the illness that ruins our plans, the failure that blocks our ambitions, the loss that denies us what we long for. But when we loosen our attachment to desire, suffering changes shape. It is still painful, but it no longer defines us. We suffer, yes, but we are not enslaved by the will's demand that life be different. In this way, renunciation gives us resilience. We become less fragile, less easily shattered by life's inevitable disappointments. Perhaps the deepest fruit of this freedom is compassion. Schopenhauer believed that when we quiet the will, we no longer see the world as merely a battlefield for our own desires. Instead, we perceive more vividly the suffering of others, and we feel moved to relieve it. Compassion is the natural expression of a mind no longer consumed by craving. In this way, letting go of desire does not isolate us from humanity, it binds us more deeply to it. Renunciation becomes not only a path to personal peace, but also a source of ethical strength. And what of joy? Does life lose its brightness when desire fades? Schopenhauer's answer was no. True joy, he argued, is not in the feverish chase of desire, but in the calm awareness of being. To walk without hurry, to work without greed, to love without possession, these are the quiet joys that arise when desire loosens its grip. They are not loud or dazzling, but they endure. They form the still waters beneath the turbulence of the will. Yet Schopenhauer was realistic. Desire never disappears entirely. The will is the fabric of life, and its voice will always whisper. The practice of letting go is not about silencing it forever, but about meeting it with wisdom. Each time we recognize desire's illusion and release it, we reclaim a measure of freedom. Each time we resist its compulsion, we deepen our peace. Over time, these small acts accumulate, reshaping the way we inhabit the world. In the end, Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a paradoxical kind of hope. He did not promise a life free from suffering. He did not promise unending happiness. What he offered instead was something quieter and perhaps truer, the possibility of peace in the midst of life's turbulence. This peace does not come from conquering the world or fulfilling every desire. It comes from stepping off the treadmill of wanting and discovering that freedom was within us all along. The freedom of letting go is not the end of life's journey, it is the rediscovery of life itself. By renouncing desire, we find that what remains is enough. More than enough. We find, at last, the peace that desire could never give.